Okay, so guys, hello everyone once again, and hello to our guests and guest speakers who are with us today to discuss about the Meta City and Meta Architecture, one of the competitions that all of you participated in, and the other ones who watched it on our channels and on Non-Architecture, Instagram, and other social media. Guys, hello everyone. And so today we have, first of all, and for the first time, we got a connection of the jury and our winners. And that's something I think unusual that doesn't happen very often in terms of the competition. Because usually we receive some feedback from the jury and never meet them or never have a chance to discuss with other people. And so we hopefully we hope to reach some nice conclusions in terms of meta architecture, and actually to give maybe some additional feedback, or maybe to have some constructive criticism about our works, or maybe reach even more interesting conclusions. So as we would like to discuss, first of all, a little bit about the entries of everyone that is here, to maybe receive some kind of more informal feedback, and also maybe the questions that were raised during the discussions about the entries from the jury, and maybe to have counterpoints from the winners that we also have with us. However, later we would like to also to talk about maybe humanization of metaverse, meta architecture, and actually to find the correlation between these two. Irina and me are a little bit of a kind of a blank page in this sense about metaverse. We know what we read and what we see kind of on the most popular streams. However, we will be kind of this critical voice that will ask questions out of curiosity. So sorry if some questions may feel a little bit easy for you, but we hope to make it understandable for everyone else. Irina, would you like to add anything else?
Yes, of course. As Alex already said, we are a blank page for you, and we are here ready to absorb everything you're ready to share with us. And I'm pretty sure that will be an amazing exchange of ideas and insights. So I'm genuinely looking forward to that. Just a quick reminder is that the main brief of you was to design an urban block in the metaverse, which all of you did in a very unique way. So let's get a bit back to the competition, and let's start the discussion from there. But first of all, let's start with the concept of what is meta architecture in everybody's vision. Therefore, before that, please introduce yourself and let us know maybe a little bit more about you and maybe what made you to join specifically this competition. Yeah, that's all for me. So thank you so much.
Rana, would you like to start?
I'll let someone else do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Snezana Zlatkovic, and I'm teaching assistant from Faculty of Architecture, University of Belgrade, and I'm also the PhD student. So my proposal was something what actually I developed during my PhD research, because I'm interested in drawing, like a methodological tool for reading cityscapes transformation. So metaverse or meta architecture is some kind of new opportunity to test or to experiment with my ideas and with some phases which I developed from hand drawings to digital drawings and then to some kind of 3D visualization. So that was my thinking about meta block, like some kind of a little bit contextual, something which could be layered, which could be colored with different overlapping and translucent thinking about space. And I try to put it like with some endless palette of materials. That was something shortest about my proposal.
Thank you.
Sounds amazing.
We'll
Thank
get
you
back
so
to the
much.
kind of comments maybe after a small introduction. Simone, would you like to introduce
Yeah.
yourself?
I'm an architect, and I usually work in the field of sustainable architecture on an everyday basis. But besides that, I'm very interested in topics that aren't very current in the architectural thinking, like the metaverse, digital landscapes, things that usually aren't much thought on, or are things that are done by game designers, or maybe even space architecture that's a lot done by engineers and not primarily architects. And when I saw the competition, I really was drawn into the topic because it was very open and you could do anything with it. And when I started thinking about my entry, I soon noticed that just one urban block would not be able to represent all the ideas I had for the metaverse. And I decided very early to expand it into the design of a whole city. So I could bring in many and the colorfulness and diversity and everything that makes the metaverse very open and accessible to a broad public. And that was the main focus of my design.
Thank you for sharing this with us. Let's not forget to mention that Simone is actually the winner. So yeah, congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
Who will be the next, please?
Ian?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. So hi, I'm Ian Nazareth, and I'm an architect and an academic and researcher. And this our entry for this competition. It's a group project with myself and Kevin Gao, who's also a recent graduate and a researcher and academic as well. And as I mentioned, we were both based in Melbourne, but now we're in different. I'm still in Melbourne, and Kevin's in LA at the moment. So I guess we were really interested in the brief for the competition specifically because it asked for something that we're so familiar with, that is a city block, but in an incredibly unfamiliar territory of the metaverse. And it's part of, I guess, for us, part of a larger sort of body of research that's really interested in trying to understand how we can look for relationships between the physical city, a service economy, and a meta city or a metaverse. And so largely our project tries to kind of deal with that entanglement. And there is a sort of reference in there in our sort of subtitle of the project, which is called Spooky Action at a Distance, which was actually a phrase used by Albert Einstein to talk about quantum entanglement. And so the idea being that how do we have some kind of causal relationship between the physical city and the metacity? So the metacity is not just something infinite, but it could be something that is linked to a digital twin. It could be linked to the physical resources in the city. So it could deal with questions of scarcity. It could deal with questions of use and behavior. So that's part of the interest in our sort of research to a large degree. And I'm not sure whether this necessarily sort of comes across, but in the image that we produce, we're trying to represent a lot of different things. And it's really trying to. So one of the things that we found really challenging was how do we represent all this. But if you're, I might paste a link in there, but there's a QR code in our project that links to a little animation that actually talks about how this thing actually works, and it's sort of so it's really a speculation about how a metacity might, or a meta block might, grow and shrink depending on what's actually happening with the physical city. So it's really building itself off a data set and thinking about how that could possibly work.
Thank you. Kevin, would you add anything?
I think not that much for the moment. Like if we're going to expand upon it, like we were planning to show sort of the work process or workflow behind it, since it is a combination between sort of AI-driven content production, but also a lot of human augmentation upon it.
Okay, thank you. So our jury, would you like to introduce yourself? Begum, for example.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Begum Aydinoğlu. I am. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, just
we do.
you
Yes,
can
all
rotate
good.
yourself.
Sorry?
Can you rotate yourself? Is it possible?
What do you mean rotate?
Because for me, you are inverted.
Really?
No, for me,
Upside down.
fine.
No?
It's
It's fine
okay.
for us.
Okay,
Yeah, it's okay.
It's all right.
sorry. Then it's my problem. Never mind.
Yeah.
No worries.
Continue.
Everything's okay.
Okay, sure.
Go on, please.
So it's really nice to be here. Thank you, NonArchitecture team, to organizing this. I'm an architect, urbanist. I have my master's degree from AA School of Architecture, and I did my master's degree on focusing with contemporary use of robotic fabrication, large-scale 3D printing years ago. And I was part of Zaha Hadid computational design head, Sharjah Busan studio, and during my London period. And that's kind of my academic background. And professionally, I am co-founder of Illusoar, which is the world's first design-oriented meta architecture and technology company. It's incorporated in Canada and Dubai. And since 5 years, we're focusing on creating metaverse experiences for brands, institutions, and large corporations, including companies like Unilever or museums, and BMW, and so on and so forth. So we're focusing on creating experiences with architectural focus. I also, within the physical realm, I'm founder of Sensory, which is a concept house, and we do deliver projects for built environment. So myself, I'm in the intersection of art, architecture, engineering, design, and virtual reality metaverse. So architectural background and physical digital experiences, combining them is what we are mostly focusing on. And Sensory is a RIBA award-winning studio from Royal Institute of British Architects. And I'm based in Istanbul, Dubai, and London. But it's hard to say nowadays in this, very virtual environments. It irritates me to say I'm based in here or there. So basically, it should be all fluid, let's say. But I'm very proud of the progress that I have been seeing and all the projects that I kind of contributed in the voting process. And happy to be here and share our future explorations and ambitions and visions for creating this metaverse in the way that architectural discipline needs to evolve.
Thank you so much.
Sounds
Begum,
amazing. Thank you.
Ronan?
Yeah, hi. So happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be a jury on this competition. So a little bit about myself, about my background. I've been studying computer science and architecture, but I didn't finish either one of them. So it's 2 years computer science and 4 years architecture. And while working in an architecture firm here in Israel, I've been focusing on doing the 3D virtual explorations for the architectural office. And that was my main focus, and I've decided since 2002, essentially 2005, that was the period in which I decided to focus on doing virtual architecture. So I've established a company called Polytown, which was a company offering 3D visualization services, software, marketing, and training. And since 2015, I've been co-founding The Craft along with my partner Emmanuel, and focusing on doing high-level photorealistic visualizations for mainly the hospitality industry around the world. So we do interior visualizations for big brands like Marriott, Four Seasons, and other hotels around the world. But we essentially do any 3D visualization, stills, animation, and virtual reality experiences. So that's my main focus today. Alongside, I've been running a blog for the field of architectural visualization since 2009 under my own name. So it's ronenbeckerman.com. And in there, I'm focusing on learning, sharing information, sharing work, and kind of like push the boundaries of what we do. And one of the main things that I'm doing is I'm running a big architectural visualization design and visualization challenge. It used to be once a year. Now it's running once every 2 years. And each time I'm proposing a theme for the participants during a 3 months work in progress kind of challenge to suggest designs, suggest ways of visualization, and kind of push the boundaries. A big challenge I did in the past was when Unreal Engine was only released, and I've run essentially the first challenge asking people to only use Unreal Engine for specifically architectural visualization, which wasn't the common thing back then, and proved to be successful also for Epic at the time. And well, we all know how Unreal Engine has been integrated into the workflow these days. So that's what I'm doing right now. A new project I've been working on in the past 6 months is a new startup company that focuses on online visual collaboration, which is something that I've been struggling with at the studio, and also many followers of the blog have been raising issues with that. So we're building an online visualization collaboration platform, which currently is in the works and hopefully will be released sometime in the next year. So this is what I'm doing. Beyond all that, I'm in this business because I love design. I've been drawing since an early age. My father is a civil engineer, and I've been walking around concrete buildings ever since I was 6 years old. So I'm fascinated by architecture. It's something I'm always thinking about, and ways to explore, the ways to showcase this kind of work. And obviously metaverse is something that is being explored deeply these days. I'm not really sure I have a formula or what's the best approach to go about this. But again, I believe this is an open discussion, and a challenge like this one is a good step in the direction of exploring this new field.
Thank you so much. And I think that you are raising the first basically question a little bit over here, and what are the rules of this metaverse? And I think that might be a question that maybe to Snezana at the beginning, what were your rules when you were creating your first box in metaverse? I would like to discuss it together, but Snezana, if you don't mind, can you join?
I didn't hear the part one. I don't know why. My connection is good, but
Okay. Don't worry, I can repeat.
okay.
What are what were the
Yeah,
rules that you were following in your project or in this metaverse design?
I follow actually my own rules, which I developed during the PhD research, and I created like maps of some kind of digital materialization which are based on hand pencil drawing, which I mapped, and then I transformed them to the digital collage, and then I put them in the cityscape or city surroundings. I decided in this competition to try to make some kind of open block, which is I could say some kind of reflection about the thinking about the open block and everything what happened that is different from traditional block, which is closed. It's like open, Le Corbusier block, and they try to put that. Some kind of closed front with variety of digital materialization, and the pure end of this block with two lines. That is a little bit of the dilemma, like is it open or is it not? And I also try to put in this drawing my thinking about meta space. Could we cut it just like some part of, is it that city block just some part or like a fragment or like a piece of cake, or is it more open urban structure? And actually I followed that stages which I developed, and I created this drawing like a part of thinking what we could learn from a meta space for our environment, because my thinking is that we could use the meta verse or meta space like some kind of some kind of new ecosystem for another thinking for architecture.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rona, do you have any comment kind of to that? Maybe?
I'm just trying to be sure that I'm looking at the right entry. So
The first one that I
Sorry.
sent you.
Yeah, it's the first one. I think that was all.
okay, just a second. Mhm.
Where I will also send the link just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like
I think the kind of the ecosystem that was touched over here, kind of how you wanted to create the ecosystem, and this is what always kind of this is the question that I always ask myself: like, are we supposed to repeat something or create something new? Because ecosystem, yeah, we have it in our earth, and we have it on an everyday basis, and we try to kind of get inspired from this or something like this. And this is what is interesting for me, if we actually should be inspired from what we have here, or we should create something completely new. That is completely new canvas, and let's do what we can.
It's question for me.
For everyone, I think whoever got kind of comment to that, feel free to contribute. Ronan
or
Begum?
just to make it
I mean,
what is the vision of the ecosystem within the metaverse, and what is
We don't hear you, Irina.
vision? Do you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. So, in general, what is the vision of an ecosystem within the meta city context, and what would be the, let's say, the user experience within that ecosystem, let's say?
Maybe some kind of experience that you don't have in the real world. and that the variety of opportunities, because of you don't have gravity and everything which is different in the experience from Avatar. So we have that opportunity to test something what was connected to some part of thinking on utopian architecture, but I think here is completely different on the one level, and we know nowadays how architecture changed every day, and especially in the context of AI and everything. So we have to think about our own architecture in some new more complex thinking, on not only about the physical thing, and I think about some change from inside to outside world and everything, which is it's not the window is different, the floor is different, everything it's user experience, it's completely maybe adaptive to that space. And my proposal for digital materialization is that you maybe it is possible to connect that part of materialization with your feelings about that space, and that it could be transmitted on that material with the color, with the transparency, with the rhythm and everything which is connected to the thinking about material.
So when you design, you imagine yourself as you are in this space, focusing on the visual and maybe hearing aspects, or it was just theoretical concept?
I think in this context, I just want to echo what has been said, because what we call, if you're calling it as a, let's say, a new type of form finding or experience, we need to be very clear about the constraints of the physical reality and the digital reality. So that's why creating digital twins is one thing, like that's obvious that we're not here for that, right? But if you're creating for the metaverse, then we need to understand the constraints of it and adapt our design language towards it. And that's how in Elizor, in our meta-architectural practice, that's what we've been doing, for example. If you don't need to transform, like you don't need to deliver what we have as a constraint in the physical reality to the digital reality if it's not a constraint. It can be a design decision. For example, do you need a beam? Do you need a column? Do you need X, Y, Z? Maybe you need a floor because X, Y, Z. Maybe you need a ceiling because X, Y, Z. For example, you need a floor for orientation, right? Because it's something that our evolution of being from physical to digital has not been completed in the way that we feel very oriented in the digital realm without a floor. But then you need to be very careful about what are the elements that you're taking from the physical reality and delivering to the digital. So I am just talking very primitive right now, but let's go to the architectural design language terms, like typology talking. So for example, if you're using procedural design techniques, if you're using like super algorithmic design procedural techniques, and which are not for construction, but your constraint is for, then it becomes in the digital reality, the mesh count, the optimization. So what I mean is, in the physical reality, the climate conditions, the construction industry, the budgetings, everything is limiting the way that you're designing. That's a fact. And the way that you design as an architect is basically the decisions that you make as an architect has been shaped with all of the response that you give to all of those questions of the inhabitants is what makes you an architect with the design. Let's ask this question again for the digital reality, for the metaverse. What makes you a great meta architect? if you are able to, firstly, you need to respond the constraints of to work with the digital life, the technology, the XYZ, and then create your own design towards that. So that's going to be my comment about this topic.
So you are saying that the architects will be the ones who will not conquer, but will be designing this metaverse, or there will be other people as well?
I
There
think
should
there will
be
be
others.
Yeah, I think there will be
there should
others. I think the way, if I can jump in on here, I can maybe address something I've seen in all three entries. So the flow of architecture does not necessarily have to be linear when you're working in the metaverse. So I think Simone's entry illustrates that very clearly. You can be here, you can be there, you can jump from one space to another. There is no need for any kind of traditional flow in terms of how the space looks, how you move around it, and what you see in it. So in that regard, I think many other disciplines would probably, maybe they could dive into this field better and start do interesting things faster. So gaming industry, cinematography industry, people doing things we haven't seen before would be the ones creating interesting stuff in the metaverse. So there's no need to adhere to any kind of physical constraints. I would also say that any kind of technical constraint right now is not something you need to stick to. So you need to push the boundaries and think about new experiences. What would make someone feel more comfortable, or what would draw someone into an experience in the metaverse versus in real life? So there are many ways to think about that. It's a challenge, but it's obviously an interesting one. And I think all three entries show that there is some kind of connection between the real world and the metaverse, and I think in many aspects there should be. How strong it is, that's a question remains to be answered.
And I think it relates also to what Simone said when she was describing her project, that box wasn't enough. And I would like to come back to that, because I think that also presents what Ronan said, that we don't have boundaries over it. We don't have so many constraints as Bergen said as well. How did you think about this, Simone?
Yeah, that was my approach. When I started thinking about it, I tried to see the metaverse as a space without rules, because as it is now, it doesn't have any. There are no government-imposed rules or from any businesses or anything. It's a blank space. And so for me, just portraying one urban block wasn't enough. And I decided very early on to portray it as a city, a complete city. And the next thought then was, why would you call it a city? It's not uncommon to use terms people already know for new things or emerging things. But if it happens, usually there's a connection between the term that was used for something else and the new thing. And I thought about which connection would a meta city have to a real city? And for me, this lay in density. Cities usually are dense in people, and buildings, and infrastructure. And so the equivalent for the metaverse for me is data. So a meta city would be a spot where a lot of data would assemble in one place. And the core thought behind this was that even though different data can be at different places and still connect easily, there are benefits in having things that need to relate to one another close to each other, because you could access things easier and faster. You could establish better connections, and it would probably also provide a better user experience. And from my point of view, the drivers behind the metaverse are mostly social networks and the gaming industry. And so I tried to take a look at how they have concepts for drawing people into something and how they make people interact with their programs or their interactions. And what I noticed is that concept that has been very old already is to have people with free access that can enter your program or your app without any threshold, and they can try it and use it to a certain point. And then there's maybe a premium content that lets you allow to interact with it further or to have some special benefits others don't have. And since this established very well and is very common in our usage of media and apps and games, I thought this might be a good starting point also to interest people in the metaverse, to create a large user base, because I think it lives from many users interacting with it and expanding it. And this was the beginning of the tile, thinking that maybe everyone would get one free tile, and this would not be measured in like meters or kilometers, but you would get a certain set of data, because this also is what ties it back to our world. The data that is created in the metaverse has to be stored somewhere, and there will be a data center and a server, and this will create costs for a business, and thus they can connect it to a value for them and can also set a price to it. And I tried to incorporate like all of these aspects that are from a user point of view and a business point of view into one economic system that would work. And at the same time, it would have no boundaries, as we know, but everyone could set up whatever they wanted in their space, like they envisioned it. Of course, there would be possibilities to enhance the experience, AI plugins or maybe preset designs, and you could also connect tiles or expand them. And yeah, I tried also to envision how would a user experience it, how might it look like if you enter into it for the first time, and how could it develop over time. And physical constraints don't really hold value for me in the metaverse. They can be there if someone decides to have them, but there's no need to have them, try to abandon them and show how open it could be, how many facets it could have, and how diverse and spontaneous it could also be.
But thank you. But don't you think that these constraints or lack of constraints is just temporary over here? Because even as Simon said, at the beginning, okay, I didn't have constraints, the box wasn't enough. But then at the end, you started talking about economics, the business, and kind of the area that we have.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I think the tile you have as a user will have limits in as how much you can put there and what you can do with the set amount of data you have. So for the user, the constraint is I have a specific amount of data I can use. And in this, I can do specific things, and maybe some things are blocked by premium content or whatever, but no constraints as in I have to have a certain physical component in there like I have in the real world. I can still do anything in there I would like within the amount I can use, so to say. And of course, there will be limits imposed by the business that run the tiles, sell the tiles, but you still have always at least one extra point. You can always design to your own needs and to your own wishes. And of course, then there's the constraint of your own imagination, which some may have more of and some might have less of. And yeah, there will always be constraints, but it will be and offer more possibilities for the mind than our real world does.
Any comments to that?
It's probably my own curiosity. Why did you integrate the tile as element to cluster the data for people? Why the tile?
The tile actually came in relatively late as a name. It was one of the final steps actually to call it a tile. But I at the beginning I saw it as when you have a program running on your PC, it has a window, and this window opens up into the world of the program you use. And this is kind of how the design started. Like you would have several windows, and they would have depth that you could see from outside by looking at it from outside. But it would still be a confined space and not bound to anything else. And so I tried to express this aspect by making the image in a three-dimensionality, but at the same time placing all of the different tiles so that they at the end generate a 2D look to them, even though there's much depth in the image. And so it's kind of reminding or it reminded me of how we use programs and computers now, and to have a relatable access point in portraying so many different things and abstract things in one image.
Okay, thank you.
So much. Anyone else would like to add anything on Simon's work?
Comment on that? Negate? Say something positive? Okay. And guys, moving to you, Kevin and Ian. You said about the growth of this metaverse, of this block, and you can clearly see this, but grow not in a kind of natural way, but more industrial way, a little bit, I think, or a virtual way in this case. What were your thoughts about it? What is actually the combination of these different images that we see, and how it actually, what do you mean by the growth of this, and where is the limit of this growth? Is there any limit?
I'd like pretty much to ask the same. What is the idea behind this expansion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent question. So I guess there's a number of things going on in our heads when we're sort of working on the project, and there's probably also a kind of sort of contradiction in that. But I'll address the first bit, which is so when I talked about it being a kind of contingent condition that is referenced to a city. So this the sort of block is approximately referenced to a city block in the city of Melbourne, and so when I say a reference to a block, I mean it's a reference to the data set of a block that we've been looking at, and in that block we're looking at the chronology of the block and how the blocks change. And also through real-time data from the city of Melbourne, we've been looking at how that block behaves over a day or over a week or over a month. And that's sort of the idea. We're looking at vacancy rates and those sort of changes in the building as a kind of example of how we could talk about growth or shrinkage in the city condition, or thinking about an elastic behavior of a building, perhaps. So we're using that as a kind of analogy to talk about, how this thing might grow or move, and it's sort of reference to a condition. But at the same time, when I say the contradiction, it's sort of we also, Kevin mentioned earlier that one of the techniques that we were playing around with, which was trying to talk about, well, if this is a condition where, that actually works out as a meta city, would we as architects be designing it, or would users be designing it themselves, or would subscribers be designing it themselves? And we played with that as a concept where we so on one hand there's a limitation to growth perhaps, and it could be that's an open-ended discussion, but on the other hand there's a kind of infinite possibility for spatial conditions, and that's more or less sort of reference with this idea of using a range of AI sort of models where you can generate architecture from search terms, or you can generate things from from prompts, and it's in that space where they're talking about things that were once typological and based on size and use, and now based on queries and metadata, and trying to use that as a kind of prompt to generate these conditions. And that then kind of leads to this question of how do you deal with the sort of stochastic architecture that's come from random probability and so on. So there's the kind of things we're sort of thinking about when we looked at it, and one of those references actually came from Louis Bourget's sort of library of Babel, where the library of infinite chambers is sort of like a repository for every permutation of the alphabet, and we're sort of thinking that might be a kind of proposition for that. But ultimately, it's thinking about contingency and how do you generate architecture that could be hallucinated by machines and data. And I think some of the rules that I think there was a question earlier about the kind of rules, and we were sort of thinking about like how do we actually talk about these conditions. And one of the ideas was that in the meta space, you're actually there is exploration rather than having clear hierarchies and order, and invention and kind of novelty is almost like a substitute for what we often describe as sort of ritualistic sort of space. And we're really designing architecture that is for engagement, and it sort of is also a kind of moment where you're designing space and experiences that have no history and no provenance and no phenomenology, attribution. So it's a really interesting question about how we actually sort of conceive these spaces, and we're trying to kind of engage with a large sort of matrix of ideas at the same time.
Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And how was like the experience of working together as a group on this project?
I can talk a bit about the work process. Yeah. So I think we are all pretty amazed on what current stage this technology is at. I guess we talk a lot about latency because with current stage like Unreal, it gives us the opportunity of real-time experience. Whilst back then, there's a duration of like how long it takes for the medium or media to get to the end user. And currently with AI generated imageries is that it almost offers like real-time creation where it only takes like a minute to generate these images. And then for our 3D visualization process, it's just projecting these images into like 3D displacements or geometries inside of the software we use as Blender. And if this like technology or work process continues to like speed up exponentially, then it's all up to the end users to generate these entire 3D rooms by themselves without any other like artist or designer that comes in mind. And sort of what are the inputs? Currently it's all text prompts, but near future it could be like perhaps Neuralink, or the AI itself will just read your physical thoughts or like emotions to generate these outcomes. And then, as Ian mentioned before, there's a lot of, I guess there's more like narratively how the data block extrudes to its like stage. So it's a point cloud of city of Melbourne, and then it implies that all of the data sample emerged from the real scan of the world, but also lots of like fictional elements where there's lots of like, I guess, internet pop culture sort of mimetic elements that is also influencing how we perceive the digital world.
Ronan, when do you see this? Thank you, Kevin. Ronan, when you see this, have you imagined this kind of process behind all of kind of this works?
No, but it makes me think about some other things. So, I mean, we've discussed metaverses being something maybe collaborated between people, but what Kevin mentioned here could imply that you could generate an entire metaverse, which would be your own singular experience. So there could be many metaverses disconnected. So you would live inside one, and it would be generated based on yourself. Whereas you could participate in a metaverse which is by definition collaborated with other people. But it could be other people, real people around the world inside the same space, but it could also be yourself with AI generated entities inside. They could be acting based on their own algorithms, or they could be reacting to whatever it is you're feeling. So you could self-script a metaverse for yourself, or you could participate in another scripted metaverse, or you could participate in a multiplayer kind of space. So there isn't any limit, and this is part of the fascination, but also part of the challenge of how do you approach this even. So probably each one gets into this with his own set of kind of like prerequisites, his own set of ideas, and that would be the driver for the creation, for exploration. So I mean, for me, there's just more questions rather than answers,
which is good.
Yeah.
At this stage.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
translating. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, in the early, I mean, before the millennia. I mean, I've been playing with my friends. I mean, back then the name of the game was Doom, and it was the first time it was possible to play over a network, be it inside the same room, right? But the transition from playing as a single person with the computer towards playing with many friends on a network, the same game, and when you move around, you see them moving around you. So in many ways, it's kind of like still the same, but the technology has made such big leaps that you could be totally immersed in that space. But it is essentially the same thing.
So translating, basically, we would have our, as you call it, singular experience, which would be home, kind of, and then we would have another metaverses, which would be this kind of public spaces that we go to.
Yeah. I mean, there's some kind of an analogy. I think. I mean, I'm thinking about it right now. I mean, what would make us use this technology? It's not that we want to use it. Something needs to happen so that we actually start to use it. So if we look at the music industry, initially we were buying CDs, right? We would buy a CD. You would get like a set of 12 songs. You would play them. When it was on a record, you had to listen to them in order, or you could pull that lever and just jump between when it was like an LP record. But then in a CD, you would still get the set, which the artist decides these are the songs in the set, but you can jump quickly between the songs, right? And then you would start streaming them down with Pirate Bay. So you would be able to just download a single song, just the one you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you got all the music you want with streaming. So you don't need to even buy that single song. You have all songs all the time, whenever you want. You could just pick one. So in many ways, if I'm trying to think about the architectural experience in the real world, so you wake up at home, and then you drive maybe to the coffee shop, you take your coffee, and then you go into the car, and then you drive to the office, and you do whatever you do over there, and then you go back home. So there's kind of like a set of things, like on a CD, okay, home, coffee, restaurant, work, and back. Okay, so that's like the CD. But with the metaverse, you can add a vacation somewhere in Thailand at the same day. You can just pick and choose whatever you want. You can restructure your day based on what it is you want, and you would not have any kind of physical constraints. So it's kind of like this: you destructure the physical existence, and you augment that in the metaverse. So work-life balance, vacation versus home versus work. You can build your own CD. You can build your own set this way. So yeah.
In your opinion, what would be the metaverse life's influence on the real life of a person, let's say?
Well, I would not speculate on that. I don't know. I'm still thinking that physical constraints.
Wouldn't it be too intrusive at some point? Do you think about it, or maybe?
I don't know. I mean, it could, like I mentioned, it could be a singular experience, like 100%, and it could be totally collaborative experience. So there's kind of like a way of, setting what it is that you want to do. There's a lot of things that still need to be, and I'm not familiar with all the development in that regard. But how do you smell in the metaverse? How do you feel in the metaverse? So I know there are companies creating, this kind of suits, sensory suits that you would then wear, and your awareness within the metaverse would be totally augmented, because whatever it is you're doing, you're touching, you're immediately feeling it, heat, cold, vibrations, smell. You can go as far as injecting chemicals to induce, feelings as you are in a metaverse experience. So there's a lot of things coming up next that we do not know how far people will take this. Totally dependent on whoever experiences this, whoever builds this, and what he comes into this game with. So, yeah.
This is what worries me. But I think, Begum, could you share your experience? Because I know you touched this in one of your sculptures that you have designed, that a person goes inside in the virtual reality, but then you also kind of 3D printed this, if I'm not wrong, and then you allowed people to feel something. Could you describe how you kind of touched this idea?
So we are always looking for the exploring new feelings, as discussed, new reality observation methodologies, and we don't just want to be either that or that, but we are always looking for how to mix those two, not with just technologically, but also experience-wise. And I mean, since we started this kind of design typologies, some people has been asking us, like, then are we just going to leave this and move into the virtual reality or XYZ? And which is not true at all at this stage, especially. I think when we are creating for a transformative period, we need to always think about what we have in the physical reality. I'm just talking for myself and from our practice, because we're coming from an architectural background that is also focusing on producing some sort of extreme digital design explorations and manufacturing them with the contemporary use of technological advancements, like such as robotic fabrication, 3D printing, XYZ. So coming from that background, which is very engineered focused architecture, how can we create this. I can give you one example of what we did as a project. So we have been working with ABB Robotics. It's one of the biggest robotics firm based in Switzerland and all around the world. And ABB Robotics wanted to work with Elisor to create not a metaverse project, which Elisor is a metaverse design company. So what we did is we created an artwork inspired by our metaverse design language from our procedural techniques, and you can check from our YouTube channel or from our website the details about the project. But basically, I was in Frankfurt in the factory of ABB Robotics, and what we were doing is basically designing every single optimization aspect of printing that artwork on top of a car with the end effector that ABB Robotics has designed. So it's very much physical project, right? And then thinking about how can we communicate the details about this artwork and the design process and even the experience of this artwork within an artwork matching with an estate, like it's in a car that you buy, right? So it's a whole storytelling. It's a three-dimensional storytelling, as we say. So coming to a very early question, it shouldn't be only just architects, that's for sure. There are other disciplines that architects should need to collaborate, otherwise it will be very much architecture oriented industry, which is impossible. That's why we are working with a advertisement agency, for example, a creative agency. We are a strategic partner with Me Metaverse Agency that has been working over 20 years of experience of working with global brands. So we need to understand the consumer of the metaverse as well. Who is going to use that? It's for the humans. And not every sector has the same needs. If you're working with entertainment sector, it's another type. If you're working with an healthcare sector, it's another type of the designs. I'm not talking about the design language, but I'm talking about the, let's say, the functionalities. It's actually for the physical reality, it's the same thing. The program is also very limiting what you will be designing because it's who it is for. You are designing something for some people. So that's why we do work with different sectors and different scales, mixing with physical and digital. We do work with agencies, advertisement agencies, engineers. We do work with, academicians. We are part of academic research that are focusing on exploring the neuroscience perspective of the effect of the metaverse to our brain and how does design has a position in this. So for example, what is our attention span? What kind of information can we put in a space? What is the content that our brain can handle? All of these things that we need to be collaborating with the necessary academic, sectoral, private, public partnerships, including the governments, when it comes to a very large scale projects.
You also said that you need to design the next typology. Is it you treat this metaverse as a kind of next thing to design? That's it as an architect?
Yeah, of course. We have published our manifest for the design language that we propose for the metaverse, which I believe it is not only us, most of the, let's say, architects, designer that has been focusing on digital architecture, digitalized technological tools, engineered, algorithm-based. All of these has been the base of the transformation that we have been facing right now. If you are designing for the metaverse, the design language that you have is going to be distinctively different from the physical design languages that we have been shaping because they are very, very limited by the even small or large, they're limited by the constraints of the physical reality, which is the construction, budget, etc. Now, as you transform those constraints to the digital reality, the design language difference makes your mind more free, but you have more new constraints, and the adaptation is the phase that you create new typologies, the new design languages. There are different kind of design languages that we can see emergingly right now in the sector. But of course, they all has its base from the previous digital physical explorations, and they're all based in something, as everything, right? Like modernism just didn't pop up of something. It all had even a political meaning of it. So that's what we're facing in the digital realm.
Okay, yeah, it's a lot to process. I need
Thank you so
to
much.
put kind of hierarchy to this. What do you think, guys? Comments, suggestions?
Anything new you've maybe discovered and anything maybe you've learned?
If not, I think we can finish on this. I'd love to talk more, but I also don't want to take more of your time and guest time. I think
Yes,
few
we can
important
wrap up.
points were set here. I would like to start, of course, from our winners, because guys, you did amazing job, and so thank you for that, and thank you for coming. All of you kind of touched different areas of this. One of you went outside the box, the other one focused actually what is inside of the box and how it can grow to the limits. And also kind of the aspects of context. And I think that's also another topic for a debate, but we could discuss. And also kind of this singular experience that all of you, I think, put into this, that Ronan mentioned. And I think that's also something interesting because all of you design based on your experience, and that's something unusual that will never be repeated. So really, thank you for that. And if you got, of course, anything to add, we are happy to listen.
I think I just wanted to say that it's very nice to share our thinking, and also to hear some kind of feedback from the jury, because usually competitions are very closed, and you maybe have some kind of textual explanation, and that's all. It was very nice.
We hope at least in this 65 minutes, I just got the message, we could give you something a little bit more, and we hope to improve in the future.
Yes.
To give you even more. So
thank you so much for being receptive to our call, and thank you to the jurors, and thank you to the participants. And I hope it was a great exchange of idea in between you, because in between us as moderators and you as guest speakers, it definitely was a really nice exchange. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I would say thank you for organizing everything, and I would be willing to join in, and I'll hopefully see you in the next challenges, next competitions.
Join us in the future. We are here on Discord, so please continue. And not to forget, guys, just as we mentioned, with NonA Talks code, you can receive a 10% discount on the to become a non-competition pro member. So to enter the every competition is for one price. So check the websites, and it's over there. NonA Talk is the code for that. Thank you so much, guys. It was a great pleasure, and hope to see you and meet you one day in person or in Metaverse. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.